Hey, welcome. So today we're going to dive into a totally different way to think about innovation. It's kind of like a scientific method for building a business, and it's completely changing how people bring new ideas to life.
If you've ever had a big idea, you've probably asked yourself this. The dream of starting something new is amazing, right? But it's always followed by this huge fear, the risk of pouring your heart, your savings, and all your time into something that just doesn't work out. It's a massive gamble. But what if you could change the odds? That's what this is all about. We're going to walk through a proven method that helps you de-risk that whole process. It lets you test, learn, and figure out if you're on the right track before you go all in.
Okay, so to really get why this new method is such a game changer, we have to get real about the problem first. Why do so many new products and new businesses fail? The answer is actually pretty simple and a little bit painful. And there it is. This quote from Eric Ries, who created the whole methodology we're talking about, just hits the nail on the head. The number one killer of new ventures isn't a lack of funding or a bad team. It's the fact that they perfectly build a product that it turns out no one actually needed or wanted in the first place.
So how do you avoid that trap? How do you make sure you're not just building something in a vacuum? Well, this is where the lean startup comes in. It's a completely different way to look at the whole challenge of building a business. And the mindset shift here is, well, it's huge. Instead of thinking of yourself as a visionary who has it all figured out, you need to start thinking like a scientist. Your amazing business idea, it's not a fact. It's a hypothesis. And just like any good scientist, your job is to get out of the building and run experiments to see if it's actually true.
So what's the engine that makes this whole scientific approach run? At the absolute core of the lean startup is a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. It's a feedback loop that drives everything you do. It's called the build, measure, learn loop. You build a small version of your idea, you measure how real customers react to it, and then you learn from that data to decide what to do next. And the most important part? This is not a one-time thing. It's a cycle. You go through it again and again, and each time you get a little bit smarter and a whole lot closer to success. Let's dig into that first step, build. Now, the key here is to forget about perfection. Seriously. The goal is not to build your grand final vision. The goal is to build something, anything, as quickly as possible just to get the learning process started. Speed is everything. Okay, next up is measure. And this is critical. You can't just track numbers that make you feel good. We call those vanity metrics, like how many people visited your website. You need actionable metrics, data that shows cause and effect. Are people actually using that key feature? Are they coming back? That's the stuff that helps you make real decisions. And that brings us to the third and maybe most important step, learn. This is the moment of truth. This is where you take all that cold, hard data and turn it into what we call validated learning. You're not guessing anymore. You are gaining actual evidence-backed insights about your customers. All right, so if the whole point is to learn as fast as you can, what does that very first experiment look like? Well, this brings us to probably the single most famous concept to come out of the lean startup movement. The minimum viable product, or MVP. Now, I want you to look really closely at this definition. The emphasis isn't on minimum product. It's on maximum validated learning with the least effort. The product itself is just a vehicle for learning. That's its only job. And there is no better example of this than Dropbox. It's the classic story. Before they wrote a single line of the complicated code needed for file syncing, their MVP was just a video. It was a simple screencast that showed people how the product would work. The sign-up list exploded overnight, and boom, they had proved people wanted it before they even built it. And this right here is the real prize. This is what you're after, validated learning. It's about replacing all your assumptions, all the, I think my customers want this, with facts. Cold, hard facts that you've proven through real-world experiments. You're building your business on a foundation of truth, not guesswork. So, you're running these experiments, you're going through the loop, you're getting all this validated learning. What now? Well, all of this work leads you to a single, fundamental fork in the road. It's a decision you have to make over and over again. You either persevere or you pivot. It's that simple. If the data is coming back positive and your experiments are confirming your ideas, you persevere, you double down, you hit the gas. But if the data tells you that your core idea is wrong, you pivot. And a pivot isn't giving up. It's a smart, structured change in your strategy based on what you've learned. So, what happens when you put all of these pieces together? The scientific mindset, the feedback loop, the MVP, the discipline to pivot. What's the end result? Well, you get a system for innovation that just plain works. And the benefits are huge. I mean, first, you dramatically cut down your risk of failure. You get to market way faster because you're not wasting time building things nobody wants. You use your money and your people's time so much more efficiently. And because the customer is at the center of this whole process, you end up with something they actually love to use. And please, don't make the mistake of thinking this is just for some tech startup in a garage. These ideas are universal. Huge corporations use this to stay innovative, nonprofits use it to design better programs, even governments are using it to serve citizens more effectively. This can work for anyone. I really want to end on this idea because it's so powerful. In the old way of thinking, changing your plan was a sign of weakness, a failure. This methodology completely reframes that. A pivot, based on real learning, isn't failure. It's the smartest thing you can do. It's intelligent adaptation. And so that leaves us with a final question for you to think about. Whatever your next big idea is, a new company, a project at your job, maybe even a personal goal, how can you apply this thinking? How can you stop assuming and start testing? How can you put the build, measure, learn loop to work?